Welcome. This is Your Story, the only podcast where our guests tell theirs with the help of only 12 questions and ideally under 30 minutes. I'm Mike Salitri, your host, and this week we welcome Josh Bolton, podcast host, coach. He's going to share the story behind his show as well as the story behind all the cool stuff he's up to. I think you're going to like this one. Welcome back to Your Story, 12 questions in 30 minutes. This is the only podcast where our guests tell their story with the help of only 12 questions in ideally under 30 minutes. Tonight, we welcome Josh Bolton. Josh hosts his own podcast, perfectly named The Josh Bolton Show. I've just learned that it's more than 150 episodes in a little over a year. Josh, how is that possible? Tell me about that.
Well, thank you for the wonderful introduction. And how it is possible is, well, I've just learned mainly consistency and patience, and there have been some interesting hills and valleys in all this.
All right, well, I want to get into those hills and valleys, starting with, if you were to go back to right before you recorded that first episode, what would you tell yourself and maybe do differently now that you've got 150 episodes under your belt?
Oh, that's very easy. So a little backstory to me is back in December 2020, 2020, we're already 2022, is I got COVID and I was sick like a dog, and essentially the big manager was yelling at me for getting COVID and saying you're expendable and this and that. And so like I said, on the floor, shaking like a dog, in the heat of COVID, and I just realized I'm like, oh, I am just a number to them. So I made a promise once I got better that I will make sure I'm not in that situation anymore. And now looking back, would tell him, my younger self, dude, just should have pulled the trigger way longer. It shouldn't have taken COVID to get you there.
Okay, so that sounds like you didn't have many options there, and that it finally was the thing that pushed you out of the door. Is that fair?
Pretty much, yep.
Okay. All right, so who do you talk to on your show? Tell me more about that.
So it's all sorts of walks of life. Like I had you on. By the way, those are one of my favorite episodes, just talking to guys like you. But yeah, I'm predominantly business. It was, when I was first starting, it was easy to pitch to a businessman to come on my show. I didn't realize what I was doing, but it was essentially, now that I'm looking back with my hindsight, I realized they're like, oh, hey, thanks. We'll get to chat with you and we get to market my business. But essentially, and now it's all walks of life. I had a musician come on explaining her process of making this semi-royalty free music. She's making herself $5,000-$6,000 a month off her music. I had, I just thought of the hypnotist, a hypnotist come on, and then he's went from like rigid like lawyer to hypnotist, and I was like, what's that story? And his tarot card. So it's all walks of life, what's interesting, and at least what I find interesting.
Okay, and without getting, I guess, too much into the specific guest, how do you find yourself approaching them? Do you talk about your background and how it might make sense, or how are you finding your guests?
So most of the guests the last half of 2021 was this awesome podcast booking agency called Podcast Viscero. They would just email me and say, hey, we have this cool guest, we think it's a match. But most of it, I believe it's how I got you too, is off matchmaker.fm. And that's been a consistent bell ringer for me. That's like $100 I spent for the whole year. It's just like, hey, awesome business coach, can I talk to you for free for an hour? The market, that.
No, Matchmaker is how we got connected, and it's a great resource in that in a world where there are so many shows and there are so many people interested in finding people to be on their shows and to listen, it kind of puts it all in one place. So that's great to hear. That's been a good resource for you.
Just curious, I'm going to reverse it. How is it treating you lately?
Matchmaker in general?
Yeah.
Pretty good. I've met a lot of hosts on there. I have not done many other shows recently, to be candid with you, just because I am focusing on this show, and I am exploring people that either I have relationships with or that I have been on their shows before, because I know what the back and forth is like, and I wanted to kind of go down that road before just making it open. So I have not done a ton with Matchmaker, to answer you directly, but from what I followed, it seems that people are pretty happy with it.
Yeah. Honestly, the one thing I'm upset about, but I get it. A lot of people don't want to just jump right into it. Is the pre-meeting before the actual interview? It's like I just sit there. I'm like, okay, like 99% of times they don't actually rebook, kind of thing.
And do you find the pre-meeting is helpful for the most part, or how has that changed how you interview and how you choose your guests?
I would say I'm just that guy. I just jump right into it. But for the others, I could see where it's useful for them, where they don't want to necessarily like. There was one I actually got on the show and it was really funny. It was like a vegan business person, and it was just one of those. I'm like, oh, okay. They're like, yeah, but we don't know. I said, well, I'm gonna be blunt. I like eating my chicken and my meat, so I can't be like full like I'm vegan.
And how did that go from there?
Oh, they're like, that's fine.
Okay,
I said, yeah, you got business, so I can make it work.
there you go. All right. And besides the business guests, I'm sure you talk to them about their business and about what services or products they might have. What else do you like to get into, so your audience can? Are you looking to help your audience learn from them? Are you looking to introduce them? Are you being taught things? What kind of things would your audience get once they listen to your show and your interviews?
So it was actually one of those. I was just chatting with my father earlier today with all the different people I just booked within 24 hours. Um, I said I kind of realized the show is personally a little selfish. I want to pick these great people's brains and learn for myself. But then it's like, yes, there's a side effect. Everyone listening gets this too. But so that so that's just been my thing. It's like I've learned so much from these people, and I have bettered myself just through back and forth conversation. That's like, yeah, it's kind of a hodgepodge of everything to answer it.
All right. Well, tell me about that. Tell me something that you have learned, or something that's you've put into practice that you wouldn't have known had you not had the opportunity to talk to some of these folks.
So we were talking before you hit the record button. The My life story is a little long, so I'll just keep it short. Essentially, I was misdiagnosed, was put on some heavy drugs. Because they thought I was schizophrenic, and well, the drugs kind of confirmed their theory. I was seeing things and hearing things that weren't there, and so I've been clean for roughly 3 years now, since I started this current W-2 job, and yeah, and it's just as I'm talking to different people. I actually last week I had a guest on ADHD coach about similar what I'm trying to incorporate. He's like, oh yeah, he's like, it's sad to say, but that's a very normal story for very empathic people who with ADHD. It's just people think you're weird and you're seeing things and put you on the drugs and shove you aside. And so that's just one of those that's like I've talked to people, the human condition. I'm like, oh, sadly, that's very normal. My story.
Yeah, that's kind of terrifying. That is normal. That's not the rare exception to the case. How did you find your way kind of through that haze, or be able to off medication altogether? How did you overcome that? Briefly.
Oh yeah, no. One thing I recommend people don't do what Josh did. I'm just very good at. I'm very stubborn. I don't. Um, so I went cold turkey completely
Okay.
off my meds.
Wow.
It was essentially a very professional business Indian doctor, and we're talking, and essentially he says, Josh, well, yeah, he's like, do you remember opening the doorknob? It's very unique. It has a spiral and like dots in it. And I'm like, no, I don't remember opening. He's like, normal people would still remember that. How long have you been on this shit again? And then this person said, professional businessman wouldn't say a bad thing. And I was just like, in my head, I said, cold turkey, done today. So,
And, did that? I would guess that stopping cold turkey would open other doors to problems, issues. What was that like?
So I did have the advantage of a couple months earlier. I went to Idaho and helped my family move to the ranch and all that. And I kind of like ran out of my meds and we couldn't ship it from California to Idaho. So for like 3 weeks, I was pretty much like taking pills every other day because I had to ration them out. It was like a blessing in disguise because my aunt and uncle kind of like forgot I was at the ranch and came back to California. So I ran out of food, I ran out of meds. I was actually really thinking, I'm like, do I need to start hunting? And do I need to learn how to set up traps kind of thing? Um, but the advantage in all that is I was in a ranch in the middle of nowhere in a mountain. So even if I did go crazy, who am I going to hurt?
Okay. All right. One thing you did mention was having the ability to talk to a coach, an ADHD coach. What was that like, or what is that something you've continued since then?
Um, well, me and him, we chatted last week, but in general, a lot of my coaches I've talked to on the show, I, it's amazing how we as humans try to make something so simple, so complex, when actually just getting the straight and narrow is so much more important than the uh, needlessly running on the treadmill thinking you're growing ahead. I guess the definition of insanity
Okay. So tell me about that. What is the simple thing that we are complicating?
is that, wow, that's a good question. My I guess it's the learn to enjoy the small things in life. So in like if you're having fun and enjoying yourself, to actually like embrace it and be like not the, oh, I have to keep a super serious business at all times. It's like just have fun. I guess is my take from a lot of these conversations.
And I think both personally and professionally, that's hard because you are either concerned about what's coming next, or you're thinking back about how you could do things better or
Hmm.
differently. So how have you done that in your life, or are you helping others kind of stop, enjoy the moment, and to have fun, as you said? How are you doing that?
It's just like this the simple things in life, having a conversation with a friend, remembering to text them, especially during these COVID lockdown times. But I think it's as we're recording this on the 17th, it looks like there is a light at the end of the tunnel now. So that's very good. Just yeah, learn, just enjoy the process. Every stereotypical entrepreneur, enjoy the process, enjoy the grind, the hustle. But it's actually enjoying like looking at the flowers on the road instead of looking at the road ahead of you, like we were talking about. Just, oh look, there's a little dandelion randomly in between two rocks. It's like that's amazing, and keep going.
That's a nice visual. I think that helps paint that picture. Kind of as you mentioned entrepreneurs there, I'm sure you've had the opportunity to talk to a good number of them. And you mentioned the enjoy the process advice. What other things are you talking to them about that has either opened your eyes about the way small business or a startup works, or I'll change my question there. What does
Mm.
entrepreneurship look like to you now that you've had the opportunity to talk to so many of these folks? How has that changed?
Yeah. So actually, it's drastically changed a lot. And it actually has opened my eyes to realize that um, I am one. I've always been one. I just didn't realize it. So as I just talked to different entrepreneurs and business owners, as we just compare notes or after we turn on the recording, they're like, "Okay, you are an entrepreneur and you're going places," kind of thing. And so now I just like before the recording, I was talking how I'm like I have coaching, I have podcasting, I am working on a book, and I'm working on this, and it's like, um, but I realize that's very normal. But I love the process of all four things, so it's not even really work to me. I know eventually this is all going to start paying and great dividends, but it's like right now it's just again back to the stereotypical, just love it, learn it, and then the money will come later.
I think that that's a good point, especially to tie into your previous point that enjoy the moment, have fun, and enjoy what you're doing, and then you'll get to see, as you said, you'll see the rewards down the road. Doing all those things, and we'll get into it. How do you structure your day as a way for it to be fruitful, or a way that you find that you can get all of those things that you mentioned? Because I'm sure writing a book, hosting a podcast, and among the other things you're doing, those take a lot of time to do them right. So how are you setting that up for success for yourself?
So I work a night shift from 12 to 6 a.m. So my day starts around midnight, and I at 6 a.m. once I'm off, it could go a little longer depending on the shift. But once I get home, chat with the family, catch up on the news that I missed yesterday, and then I go right to the grindstone about hour and a half, just nonstop typing. Then I start booking things 10 a.m. to like 1 p.m. my time, and so knock out an interview, and then in between those two, I sometimes after like chatting with the family and catching up, I'm learning trading, so I had to go check my charts, add some notes on the screen itself, and be like, okay, there's nothing, but it looks like maybe in like 3 days I could buy in here, and that's about it right now.
Okay. So for the typing, I will think that's the book that's coming together.
Yeah, the
And
content.
and what's that about? What's the book focused on?
So the first one I'm working on is kind of like my thing. I've realized what I for the coaching, but in general, is I guess most business owners don't realize that their employees are actually their greatest assets, even though they treat them like shit. So it's just writing a book to show that I even though I haven't actually like opened a firm and have a W-2 employees, it's like I wrote a book to show this is what I'm working on. This is why you should consider this, and if you need help, obviously call me, kind of thing.
Okay, I think that would be helpful for a lot of businesses. What types of advice, or what are you talking about there that a business owner might either be overlooking now, or they might read and say, "Well, I really need to start putting this in place or implementing this for my folks because I have not been doing that."
So especially with the Great Resignation, whatever the media is calling it now, is what I teach small business owners is because everyone's claiming, oh, these little 18-year-olds on their TikTok don't want to work. They just want free money. It's like, no, they're the generation that they'll call you out and be like, you're an asshole, and I'm not going to work for you. I said, other generations, we were trained to keep our head low and just take it. They're the generation that they'll just call you out on it. I said, but if you notice, the companies that are succeeding are the ones with a mission, the ones that actually facilitate and help their employees. They're actually having to throw people out because they're like, hey, we got too many like applications. Like, let's thank you, but go somewhere else, kind of thing. I said that's actually a good problem for business owners to have. Is when you have so many people just slamming on your door, like, we want to work for you.
So how would you say you've got? How do you have your mission structured currently to get all the things completed that you're working on, or to get everything moving forward in the right direction? What would you say your mission is now?
So currently, it would be like signing up for a chamber of commerce, help my local area out, get some under my belt. But in general, just trying to. Okay, so the my mission and like the scheduling or the getting to the process of teaching the people.
Tell me what your mission is. Why you
Oh,
do what you're doing.
so I believe in general we should just treat people with kindness and compassion, and um it's it sounds silly, but it's like teaching people in general, but also specifically business owners, CEOs. It's like you do realize the process. If you're actually nice to your employee, like you actually give them good bonuses instead of like, oh, here's like a gift card for $10 for a gas station. It's like that's cute, but it's like the remember that they are human too. Well, here's a good example. One of my security gigs back in the day um, was a warehouse situation, and I was just a glorified clerk essentially. And so this like guy with like a Hell's Gate on his neck and all tatted out, prison style. came in and pretty much said like, hey, I wish I got in a car crash and broke my legs. You could stay home for 6 months. That way I don't have to work. It just so happens the like head guy who made like his fortune going up the ranks and in the logistics company, he was like, hey, this is like my baby, the warehouse that got me going to where I am. Why is it failing? And I told him that's where the prison guy that just passed. I'm like, that guy over there literally wished he got in a car crash instead of coming here. So I'm like, morale doesn't exist here. I'm like, I get it, you're a warehouse, but like, can't you give them something like $100 for a minimum wage worker is actually game changing. Sad to say. It's like, could you have an extra $100? But you could give them a gift card to wherever. I said easy ones, usually just Amazon, or just Visa, PayPal one, and just give it to them. He's like, yeah. I said, okay. So we just worked on a gamification technique, and you saying, okay, this is what I expect. If you do it, I reward you with 100. The top 5 players get $100 each. And production was insanely quick. Like the amount of injuries went down. Let's say average, it was 2,000 packages an hour. They were suddenly averaging 8,000, 10,000 packages an hour, and nothing really fundamentally shifted. So that's kind of my mission. It's just like, treat them as a human. If they're literally wishing to break their legs to go home, you might want to change your tactics.
Yeah, I think you put it best there, that morale can't be too high or non-existent. If that's what people are saying when they show up, that they would prefer to have that be their outcome than to work. So you saw those kind of 4 or 5x results just by simply rewarding positive behavior and by acknowledging things that were happening that were good.
Just acknowledge their existence. Like the supervisor, she called me later on the phone where I was working when there was no traffic and said, what do I do? I said, humans, we're human. Just compliment them. Thank you for whatever. That means a lot. There's no monetary value. We can't put a price to that, but emotionally it makes us feel better. It's like, oh, I'm doing good. So, okay, I do that again. Kind of thing.
And have you got into this with a lot of the business owners on your show?
Yes. And that's how I realized my process is through talking to them. I realized, oh, I do have something now. I just need to structure it.
Okay. So they've kind of supported what your mission is into saying, yeah, this is not only something that makes sense as you say it, but it also would work in a lot of different businesses. Is that the kind of conversation that you've had?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the biggest one I've come to, is like, this is not just crazy talk. I'm not trying to be like, blow smoke up someone and just be like, oh, like, I think I can make money. It's like, oh, this is actually a legitimate thing and I can actually like scale it too.
Very nice. All right. Well, tell me about your coaching business. I know you referenced it a couple times here. What are you currently doing? What are you looking to do, and who are you looking to help?
So, who I'm currently looking at, like clients, like I said, small business owners, is the predominant with the leadership and all that, but it's also just general life advice. Instead of having to go through the long trial like I did, it's like you could just, whatever package I'm sending is like, you shoot me an email or Zoom call one-on-one and just be like, what do I do? It's like, well, I did this. You shouldn't do that. Unless there's obvious medical condition, don't do that. It's just, I guess, the mentor I was wishing and hoping for when I was younger, but I didn't know there was such a thing back then. And I want to be that person. How I always phrase it, even the show and everything I'm doing, is what would younger Josh, the drugged out mania that I was, what would he want? And that's how I form a lot of my ideas. It's like, he would want someone to tell him, you're not crazy. This is normal. Okay, this is what we do now.
I think there's 2 really important things that I'm just going to kind of reiterate and flesh out. First is that we all could have used mentors, can use somebody in our corner helping us forward at all points. So acknowledging that's really important. I think you'll see a lot of a need for that. And the second thing is a lot of what I found coaching to be is that you're finding people that were in your shoes 1, 2, 5, 10 years before, and you're helping them solve the problems that you've walked through, or that you can you can say that this is something that I've seen and I've solved, or I can help you solve. And that goes hand in hand with the mentor piece. I think that's great that's how you are framing what you're doing and where you want to take it. The last thing I kind of wanted to hit on, you mentioned it, that you do some trading as well. How did you get started in that? And then what is that? What, because that's an area that I'm not too much of an expert in. So talk a little bit about that if you could.
So there was the March 2020 crash that piqued my interest because I was curious, why are some people dancing in the street like it's the best thing since sex, and some are crying like Beelzebub has entered the room? And so that was just my main reason, and that's where I'm like, okay, why are people sad? And Google couldn't figure out the question, so I just went to my newsfeed and said market crash, drop of 10%. I'm like, oh, interesting. What does that mean? And that was it. That was what started my whole thing. It's like, okay, I was listening to podcasts on like stock trading and boring. Gosh, it was some of the stuff I've read. I would not recommend unless you really want to know that knowledge. I would just say, hey, I can give you a cliff note real quick. You don't have to listen to 50 hours of lectures of today in the markets we will be talking about. Um, it was just yeah, and then that's when I realized the puzzle solving, the patterns for me it's a huge thing, and strategic thinking. And I think I like that for the market. It's always, but I would say you can't deal in absolutes in a market too. It's a predominantly moving target. So if you can get in early before it starts, you can make a lot of money. But this pretty much applies to everything, even in real estate. As long as you can get in early, or say, I think the bubble for real estate is now popping too, huh?
It depends. That's a big question, but you're right as far as the market and real estate mirroring each other as far as the benefit of being first or early. How are you finding in the stock world, the trading world? How are you identifying early? Or that's something that I think eludes a lot of people, including myself, that this is something I haven't already missed, or this is the start as opposed to something that's already on its way. How are you doing that?
I would say, but it's like any other trade. I would say, especially for you, I'm not savvy in real estate. That's where, as I'm looking at different stuff, it looks like the real estate's coming down. But see, this is where I would call you for a quick thing about coaching on real estate. Um, for me, a lot of my indicators are saying is I use old school technical analysis because everyone thinks it's dead, and it actually works really well for me. So it's like kind of contrarian. If no one's you no if everyone's cursing it, I'm going to use it, kind of thing. Um, say that would apply for real estate. If everyone's wanting to buy, you sell. um, it's kind of like, well, I want to say I'm really oversimplifying. That's not how it works, but um, essentially that's how I approach things. And I use different stuff. I'm gonna say this is one of those you probably should look up a few stuff on it on like YouTube. There's actually I learned a lot of my core stuff from YouTube.
Any
It's
good recommendation channels to check out, or anybody
the
that, you know?
the plain bagel.
Okay.
Um, and I would say if you just type in YouTube technical analysis on like stocks, it's just a guy with his charts explaining everything. A lot of people ask me, "Will you teach us how to trade?" I'm like, "No, that's like financial advice and lawyers. I doesn't matter how many things I have you sign, I still can get my house taken from me."
All right, so the Plain Bagel on YouTube to check out. As you were saying that, I was having cold sweats thinking back to a book I read about charting stock performance and looking for, I think it was teacup or coffee cup, and then
Oh, I hate those. No.
so I hope that's not what you're talking about, because that got me a quick. I put that book down. I was like, all right, this is not for me.
Yeah, that's like that boring 50-hour lecture I was talking about. I can give you a better cliff note, less boring, real
Okay,
quick.
good. I wanted to make sure that wasn't the technical aspect that you were talking about. But
No.
I would like to have you leave our guest with this: there's a lot of people who ask me, I want to start a show. I'm interested in a podcast. You have done it. You've hosted, again, over 150 episodes. You've talked to people who are running successful businesses, people who have in the past, maybe in the future, kind of all different levels, as you stated. What are three things that they can do that can get them started? Or what are three things that either you did or wish you had done to get your show where it is today?
So actually, funny thing, another one a lot of people have been asking me is, can they like, I make a like $100 package, just cliff note everything. So that's um, so what I tell people is just invest in a good mic. You can always use it. You don't want to go with your built-in computer mic. So your first one is just get a good mic. Second one is, it's really more the hard part. What do you love talking about? And can you monetize that? I just love talking to people in general and picking their brain. And I know in the process, there's so much value added that eventually advertisers are just going to be like, where have you been this whole time? Kind of thing. But just again, back to the love the process, love the grind. It's just, you're not going to be paid for at least the first year or two. It's like any business. I think there's always exceptions to the rule. This one lady I know, she told me she helped a podcast within 6 months just reviewing apples. They're making $50K a month. I'm like, reviewing apples. Why would I go to a podcast for an apple?
Okay. That's they love talking about. Okay, that's 2. What's number 3?
3 is choose your provider. Is do you want more exclusive content just on like Spotify? Then Anchor is the way to go. But if you want to reach a bigger audience, which I've come to realize actually Spotify is not my heavy hitter when it comes to downloads. It's actually Apple and Podcast Addict. So I just pretty much recommend pick your provider, pick the plan that works for you, because you can get lost in some of these podcast providers are pretty scammy. The good ones that I always say is like go to Buzzsprout or Podbeam. They're pretty intuitive. They're easy. It's kind of designed for a grandma if she's looking at the thing. It's just like, oh, I clicked this button, okay. And yeah, I get a couple hundred off Apple every month and a couple hundred off Podcast Addict. And so I always recommend people with that.
All right, that's awesome advice. Thank you, Josh. Last question for me. What's something I didn't ask you that I should have?
No, you were very thorough, actually. I can't think of any.
Okay, excellent. And where can our listeners find you?
It's easy peasy, joshboltonshow.com. Instagram, same handle, Josh Bolton Show. I have a little thing, a contest. If you hit me up on my social media, Instagram or Twitter, and like you screenshot this episode and tag me, I will DM you for your address and send you a sticker. I will actually like hand make a vinyl sticker and mail it to you.
It's fantastic, and I hope a lot of you take Josh up on that because that sounds pretty wonderful. Josh, I'd like to thank you, Josh Bolton Show, joshboltonshow.com, and check him out. As you can tell, he's got plenty of cool stories, talks to all different sorts of folks, and they're telling him their cool stories. So,
oh yeah,
Josh, thank you for your time. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Mike. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure.
You got it. Be good, Josh.